All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning. My name is Ezra. I'm at VPLC. I'm going to be your host today. We are going to talk for this coffee chat about the legislative review, so you know that how the session ended. Our speaker today is going to be our Executive Director, Jay Spear. If you have any questions at any point, feel free to put them in the chat. I will be monitoring that the entire time, and we'll make sure to have a few minutes at least at the end to go through Q&A. So please do put those in there. I'm going to ask everyone to remain muted right now. You can always, at the end, there will be opportunity in the Q&A to unmute if you want to ask your question live. That's no problem. If you have a question and you do not want me to read your name out loud, or you'd like it to be anonymous for whatever reason, you can just message it to me directly and I will read it out loud. As you noticed, this is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel in the coming days. I will be sending a follow-up email to all registrants with that link, along with any additional resources, including this slide deck. So be on the lookout for that again in the next few days. And again, the last thing is that if you have any technical issues, can't hear, whatever it is, again, message me. I'm happy to try to troubleshoot in the meantime. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jay to get us started.
Okay, thanks, Ezra. And thanks everybody for joining us. My job is to go through some of the legislation that we worked on in this office. Either we pushed the legislation ourselves, or we worked with other coalitions to get this passed, or we just joined in support of some of this legislation. But there's a lot of different things, and I'm not the expert on all of them, but if you have questions, be sure to ask them, because I do have some experts on here that can answer more in-depth questions. So as Ezra said, this was a review of when the session ended, but it hasn't ended. You know, on March 11th, as you probably know, the General Assembly adjourned, but only to have, but the problem was that they had not agreed to a budget, which is not really surprising, but that happens a lot, especially when you have one party in control of the Senate and a different party in control of the governor and the House of Delegates. Now, the governor did call them back for special session on Monday, the 4th, but what they ended up doing was just a very short session, and they continued the session. And with, as I think they both did told the members of the House of Delegates and the senators that they'd get 48 hours notice before they started meeting, before they meet again. And the reason they do that is so that when they do agree on a budget, they give the members 48 hours to take a look at it before they have to come back and vote on it. So there's a lot of bills that have passed the General Assembly before March 11th, but haven't been signed yet by the governor. Now, the governor, there is a deadline. The governor has until April 11th to take action on these bills. So so something's going to have to be done by then, one way or the other, or else, and if he doesn't do anything, the bill's pass. But of course, he can also amend bills. Virginia's a little bit unusual in that sense, where the governor can make an amendment, and then it goes back to the General Assembly for their reconvened session, which is April 27th. And they can either accept or reject the governor's amendments. But of course, the governor can also veto bills. But if he does that, the legislature has a chance again at the reconvened session to overturn the veto. But just like in the federal system, you have to have a 2/3 vote to do that. So go ahead and next slide, Ezra. So the first set of issues we're going to talk about is from the Center for Economic Justice. Next slide, please. So this bill had to do with universities denying students with debt access to their transcripts. There was a lot of stories about this, probably 5 or 6 stories, a lot of them coming from Megan Pauley at Virginia Public Media. She did a really nice set of about I think 4 or 5 stories back in the fall called Dreams Deferred, which she actually won an award for those. But she really brought this issue to light. And we found there was something like 50,000 ex-students that are saddled with this problem. And it did not pass. There is in the House budget, we're hoping for a study of this issue and to come back on this issue next year. I'm going to read you. If you follow our Facebook page, we usually post when reporters write about our issues, because first of all, it helps bring awareness to the issues we're working on. But secondly, the reporters usually do a really nice job of describing an issue and giving you the human side of it. So if you haven't seen those, our stories that we've referred to on Facebook, you may want to go back and look at those. I think I'm also going to try to gather all those links for you and probably send that to you afterwards. But let me read from you. This was a story after this bill failed called Bill to Stop Colleges from Holding Transcripts Hostage is defeated in the House subcommittee. And this is a quote from Senator Hashmi, who brought the bill in the Senate. In a world of crushing student debt, this is the most short-sighted, if not mean-spirited insult they could add to injury. We're disappointed universities wouldn't cooperate with this effort, despite changes that were made to the bill. Withholding a transcript that shows courses a student has completed and paid for is like refusing to give a receipt for something that's been paid for. Public universities, which often have substantial endowments, should not be holding back students who are dealing with financial hardship. Next slide, Ezra. So next issue was, there was last year, the General Assembly passed the Consumer Data Protection Act, and then there was a bill this year to try to amend that legislation. And it was, what they were trying to do was, in the bill that passed last year, it says that this has to do with protecting your own data, your own consumer data. And in the original legislation, it said that if something is deemed sensitive data, which I don't want to get into the details of that, but if it's deemed sensitive data, you have to get a person's permission before you can access it. And they tried to come back this year and say, no, if the consumer doesn't want you to use it, then they have to tell you they don't want you to use it. And it was really kind of pathetic. This bill passed the House, but we were able to get it defeated in the Senate. And I just found it amazing that the Advertisers Association would stand up and say that we have to change this, because if we ask consumers if they want it, they'll all say no, and they're not realizing what a good benefit they're getting from this. But thankfully that got defeated. Next slide. So this bill prevents medical providers from harassing people who have asked for assistance from the Virginia Consumer Victims Fund. I really thought this bill would be easy to pass, because who would be in favor of allowing debt collectors to hound victims of violent crime? But we had a hard time with this. The House bill did not pass. The Senate bill did finally pass. We had to make changes, but I think it's still a good bill. And there was also a story about this called "Bill Aims to Stop Medical Debt Collectors from Hounding Victims of a Violent Crime." And there's a quote. The quote from that article is, "In Virginia, victims of violent crime can tap into a state fund to pay their medical bills, funeral expenses, and other related out-of-pocket costs. Some lawmakers want to make sure debt collectors can't harass people while they wait for these payments to come through." That's actually currently the law, and all this bill tried to do was make it easier to enforce it. And it did, and as I said, it did pass, and it's before the governor. Next slide. Now on to housing. This bill passed and is before the governor. It allows tenants to appeal their eviction cases from general district court to circuit court. Now what it means is the litigants can have their appeal bond waived. So for legal aid clients, this is really important. If you can't have your appeal bond waived, then you basically have no right to appeal. And you can do this in every other case under current law. except for eviction cases. And so this legislation will change that and include eviction cases as a type of case you can appeal and have your appeal bond waived. And again, we're waiting for the governor's decision on this. Next. This bill also passed, and we're waiting for on the governor on this. It gives localities another tool to address unsafe and unhealthy living conditions. There was a good story on this, and this story came, I think, from Virginia Mercury. Slumlords beware. Virginia may give localities new power to go after poor housing conditions. And I'll actually read you a quote from Christy Mara from our office from that story. It isn't just urban areas that experience horrible conditions in residential buildings. Our goal is to create a statewide legal atmosphere that offers tenants and localities the ability to choose what tool is best to ameliorate any given situation. Those landlords who don't currently take their responsibility seriously may begin to do so once these cases get filed and start receiving more attention. Next slide. This bill directs the Department of Housing and Community Development to convene a stakeholder group to develop a model mobile home lot lease. And as the slide says, we hope to see an increase in leases that accurately reflect the rights of mobile home park residents. For the last several years, VPLC has spent a lot of resources and staff working on mobile home issues because we think it's an extremely important low-cost housing choice for our clients. Next. So next we go to the Center for Family Advocacy. Go ahead, Ezra, next slide. The first issue, this is a bill that we were able to defeat. And we're going to talk about two bills. This bill would have created an affirmative defense for abusers who violate protective orders when the victim invites or solicits contact. If the bill had passed, abusers would be able to violate protective orders with impunity. If I'm not mistaken, this passed the Senate, but then we defeated it in the House. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But we were glad to see this bill go. Next slide. So diminishing, this bill gets brought pretty much every year, as long as I can remember. Some version of this bill gets brought, and basically it raises one parent's wish for shared time above judges weighing all the best interests of the child, and we just don't think that's. And most people who do this kind of family advocacy do not think this is a good idea. And so we every year we have to fight along with other folks to get this defeated, and once again it was defeated. So the next, and this is another bill that we worked on, but unfortunately did not pass. Senator McClellan's bill to clarify, this has to do with workplace harassment, and it had to the law passed a year or two ago, I can't remember which, and this was to clarify things, which would have been a good bill. Again, I think it passed the House, the Senate, but not the House. But somebody can tell me if I'm wrong about that. Next slide. Okay, family and child welfare. So this is a bill to ensure court oversight of foster care placements. This is something also that in the last several years, VPLC has worked a lot on foster care issues. While the bill was amended, it doesn't include all original protections. It will clarify and strengthen court oversight of placement decisions. And like I think, unless I'm mistaken, every other bill I've mentioned in here that's passed is still before the governor, and we're still waiting to see what he's going to do with it. But again, we do have that April 11th deadline. But the bill also orders a study of the capacity of the court system to give the proper attention to these cases. Next slide. So this was our initiative along with, shoot, I'm blanking on the other organization, but to create pilot parent representation centers to increase access to justice for parents. We believe this improves outcomes for children in foster care. And this unfortunately was not funded, but there was a work group created. So we'll be continuing to work on this. And Valerie and Esther Sherrod did a nice op-ed. Thank you, Sheila, Voices for Children. Did a nice op-ed in, I forget where it was, but and that was also in our, we put that in our Facebook post if you want to take a look at that. The title of it is "We Can Improve Outcomes for Children in Foster Care by Investing in Quality Legal Representation for Their Parents." Next slide. All right, hang on a minute. I had notes on this, but I can't find them. But anyway, this is a bill to give relatives of children in foster care an opportunity to appeal the denial of foster placement. It passed both houses, so again, we're waiting for the governor. It creates more transparency when local departments deny relatives applications to serve as the foster parent of their kin child. Relatives are often passed by when in reality they can be the best foster parents for a child. When relatives are unreasonably denied, the appeal process will provide another opportunity for an unbiased look at their situation. Next slide. Now we're moving on to the Center for Healthy Communities. Next. So under elder law, there's a lot of action under this section. This was a very good bill that passed, and again, is before the governor. It has to do with protecting vulnerable Virginians facing eviction from assisted living facilities. If you're not familiar with what an assisted living facility is, it's usually an adult who needs care, but not enough care to qualify for a nursing home. So sort of a lower level of care, but there's a lot of these facilities that offer this care. And unlike nursing homes, if they want to evict somebody from one of these facilities, you don't have any due process rights under current law. This will change that. And hopefully the governor will sign this. And there was another good story on this. General Assembly passes protections for Virginians evicted from assisted living facilities. And it's there's some good stories about what's not good stories, but tragic stories about what's happened to people who have been evicted and haven't had any due process rights. Next section. Next, okay. Guardianship reform. This was a big issue. Bills from Senator McPike and Delegate Hudson that included guardianship reform measures passed both the House and Senate. The JLARC did a big study on this back in the fall and suggested a whole lot of reforms, and a lot of them were taken out, but they did pass some of the reforms. So this is sort of basically your half a loaf legislation. Don't get the whole loaf, but at least we got half a loaf. Next slide. All right, nursing home reform. I think this kind of says it all. This is an article, and this is the title of the article. For the 18th straight year, House and Senate panels reject nursing home staffing mandates. This is for 18 straight years, they have rejected this legislation. I really do not understand why. We thought it was the year for this because of what happened during COVID to nursing home patients. But we did, there are two budget amendments, two key budget amendments. And the first one is something we've worked on for years and years, and it's a really good thing. Additional funding for the long-term care ombudsman. These are the folks that look out for nursing home patients. Raise funding for that, and that's a really good thing. The ombudsman program provides advocacy and assistance to individuals in nursing homes. assisted living facilities and home and community-based service programs. So we're very happy about that, but we're not happy about all the staffing requirements not passing. And I think, is that the last? No, go ahead, next slide. Okay. Oh, and there are two key budget amendments. Again, the budget hasn't passed, but we're hoping these things will be in there. I hope they will implement the Joint Commission on Healthcare recommended staffing standards through the budget. Virginia's been failing to act on staffing standards for over 18 years, as I've mentioned, but this would implement standards starting in 2023. And I think, it's 2 decades of research have shown that staffing standards are the best way to ensure nursing home resident outcomes and prevent death. Next slide. Health insurance, our efforts to ensure medical debt protections were successful. Delegate Tran and Senator Favola's bills that provide information about hospital charity care programs to patients in their preferred language both passed. Hospitals must also screen all patients for Medicaid, famous, and charity care eligibility and offer a payment plan to all uninsured payments before taking debt collection action. These are some important reforms. Many of these things you might think to yourself, they've been doing this themselves, but it's obviously these things require legislation. Next slide. Again, under health insurance, we successfully advocated for Medicaid program language access. Delegate Tran's bill, and we really thank Delegate Tran. She really worked hard on these issues. It required DMAS to ensure that all Medicaid program information is accessible to those with limited English proficiency and individuals with disabilities. We put an emphasis on language access this year, and several of us worked on these issues. Next slide. Under public benefits, an increase in TANF cash assistance by 10% was included in the Senate budget. So we don't know whether that's going to go through or not. Next slide. Subsidizing the reduced school meal plan was included in both the House and Senate budgets. This will provide funding to local school districts to reduce or eliminate costs associated with school breakfast and lunch programs. So it's in both budgets, so chances are good it's going to make it in the final budget, but you don't know until it comes out. Next. This was not included in the budget, but this was an initiative to pre-enroll incarcerated folks in SNAP, or as formerly known as food stamps, before they're being released to try to ease their introduction back into the community. Next. And I think this is the last slide. Language access was, as I said before, several of us worked on, a couple of us worked on this issue. Language access was included in both budgets. While both bills from Senator Hashmi and Delegate Tran failed, there's still $6 million in the House budget and $11.8 million in the Senate budget for state agencies to facilitate and improve language access. And again, we'll see what happens when they pass the final budget. Is that it? Yes, thank you. So, what questions do we have? Some of which I hope some of my experts will answer.
Yeah, I believe some of the questions here that I see in the chat were answered by some of those people.
Okay,
but just to
great.
read it out loud for those who may be watching the recording, there's one question that says, was the authority of the Virginia Employment Commission to waive overpayments of benefits extended beyond the expiration date of June 30th of this year? I believe Christy's answer of no is the answer to that. And another...
No, Ezra, no, I was answering the question about House Bill 614. I don't know anything about the unemployment stuff.
Okay, good. All right. Well, then we will answer that one.
No, we won't, because I don't know the answer either. At the moment, we don't have anybody who works full-time on unemployment issues. Hopefully, we hope to rectify that soon, but at the moment, no. So, Don't have the answer, sorry.
Then the other question is, has the governor signed HB 614 waiving the appeal bond for indigents and non-payment of rent evictions? And I see that Laura followed up and said the governor has not signed HB 614. He has until April 11th at midnight to act on the bill. And if he does not, it will automatically become law. I see another question that came in. Can you review the change to the 14-day pay or quit rule for evictions on July 1st?
Very sadly, our efforts to make that 14-day time period for pay or quit notices, meaning the amount of time that a tenant has after receiving a notice of non-payment of rent, in which to pay the rent and late fee before the landlord can file the eviction case in court. That was a 5-day period before the pandemic. It became a 14-day period during the pandemic. And despite really strong efforts by Delegate Price and advocates, the bill to make it permanent, that is to extend it beyond July 1st of this year, did not pass. And so beginning July 1st, the state will revert back to requiring only 5-day pay or quit notices.
Thanks, Christy, for answering that. And thank you, Salam, also for that correction, as Salam has moved into a different role at VPLC as Deputy Director. And therefore, instead of contacting him for public benefits information, Cassie Edner is our new public benefits attorney here at VPLC, and her email is cassie@vplc.org if you'd like to connect with her. Do not see any more questions at the moment, and I know we are coming up at 9:30. Obviously, anyone can leave at any point. I know this is supposed to end at 9:30, so feel free to hop off, but we can also hang around if anyone has any additional questions. And I see Marty here posted in the chat that he found the answer. HB 600, which makes permanent the VEC's authority to waive overpayments, was laid on the table in a House committee 3-2. Thank you so much for finding that.
You know, I will say, I just followed this tangentially, but there were a lot of changes made to the unemployment system to try to deal with the problems that recipients were having, and that VPLC and many other legal aid organizations like Legal Aid Works and Legal Aid Justice Center all sued the state over.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. You see on the screen here, there are plenty of contact information here on the screen if you have additional follow-up. And again, just to remind you, I will be reaching out via email to everyone who registered for this copy chat. I will include a PDF version of these slides, along with some of the things that Jay referenced as he was talking, specifically Facebook posts that we have made, some of those articles. So be on the lookout for that in the next few days, along with the link to this recording. And thank you so much for attending this, and also for those who had answered questions. We always really appreciate it, and it's always great to really connect with everyone to keep you all updated. So if you have any questions and need anything from me, you can reach out to me at ezra@vplc.org. Jay, any last parting words you have?
No, just thank you everybody for participating, and feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.